Good day, class. In the previous video, we have discussed one of the best time of Chinese medicine. A lot of improvements, a lot of achievements during the period. In this video, we're going to start from the year 1840 to 1949. So this period is almost 100 years to us, 100 to 200 years to us. This was one of the worst periods of Chinese medicine as well as for Chinese. The reason why I'm saying so is because during this period, there were so many wars in China. And these wars affect the population in China, also affects the thoughts of Chinese medicine, as well as the development of Chinese medicine. As we mentioned previously, the development of Chinese medicine will inevitably be affected by the development of the country. Just to name a few, what happened during this period. In 1840, the British started the war in China. In 1857, the British and France Allied Army started the war again in China. In 1884, the war between China and France broke out. In 1894, the war between China and Japan. In 1900, 8 countries from Europe invaded China. In 1931, Japan started another war in China. So as you can see, just to name a few, almost 100 years from 1840 to 1931, these 100 years, the big wars, almost a few decades. A few years or a few decades, there will a new war happens in China. So because of the wars, the Chinese, they start to think what make us lose the war. Is it the culture? Is it Chinese medicine and acupuncture make us undeveloped? So that's some of the thoughts. As kinds of renovation, the educated people, they want the renovation to make the country better. This also affects Chinese medicine a lot. So during this period, there were not, despite of the war, there were still some improvements in Chinese medicine. For example, the establishment of Chinese medicine schools, the establishment of Chinese academic associations, and also the establishment of the journal, the actual journal. Some of these associations have been carried on until today, although the name has been changed. The establishment of Chinese medicine school, especially in early 20th century, so after 1900 AD, that's because the government of China at that time, they banned the Chinese medicine education officially. So they banned the Chinese medicine from public schools. So some practitioners, they start private colleges to train Chinese medicine practitioners. There were also some other developments in all modalities, such as in pharmacology, in formula, in internal medicine, in gynecology and pediatrics. Most of them were kinds of collection of the previous works. When we discuss the history of Chinese medicine, there's one topic that we will never be able to avoid, which is the introduction and development of Western medicine or conventional medicine. Western medicine was introduced to China in early 19th century. This was accompanied by the introduction of Christian. The first doctor that practiced in China actually was a missionary. In 1807 to 1820, he set up a clinic in Macau. And afterwards, more and more missionaries set up clinics in the ports. That's where they were allowed to practice. As we discussed before, China has never been colonized. The whole country has never been fully colonized. So the missionaries will only be able to practice in some ports, as they agreed on they agreed on from the government. The conventional medicine practitioners also established the medical schools, enroll students. They also send students to study Western medicine overseas, and thus greatly enhance the medical education of Western medicine in China. For some statistics, for example, in 1938, there were one statistics that in China there were 300 hospitals, approximately 21,000 beds. All these hospitals were established by the by the missionaries. When the missionaries they introduced Western medicine, they see patients with Western medicine in China. They also translated a lot of medical books and medical publications from other language into Chinese. In the meantime, the Chinese practitioners, the Western medicine, the Chinese Western medicine practitioners also had populated because of these Chinese educations. Some medical textbooks in conventional medicine were also published by the Chinese practitioners. These developments, especially the developments of conventional medicine, there's no need to deny that the positive aspects in promoting human health. However, these thoughts also create a lot of conflicts between conventional medicine and Chinese medicine. Considering the backgrounds in that period, some practitioners started to think about what makes us undeveloped, what makes us poor. So, especially with the interference from Western medicine, the knowledge from Western medicine, the introduction and development of Western medicine in China, some Chinese medicine practitioners started to try to integrate Chinese medicine and Western medicine. For example, Tang Zhonghai, he was one of the earliest one tried to explain Chinese medicine and Western medicine in the same way. For example, he published one book called Blood Syndrome. In that book, he tried to explain the blood in Chinese medicine and the blood in Western medicine. What was the relationship? He also tried to explain the jaundice in Chinese medicine and Western medicine. In future, when we study the therapeutics, you will see that in Chinese medicine, the jaundice we think it might from two sources, one from the spleen, one from the gallbladder or the liver. However, from Western medicine, The jaundice is from the dysfunction of the liver and gallbladder. So there are some conflicts how to integrate these two medicines become the huge debate in these practitioners. We are not going to introduce all these practitioners. We only list a few here. There were still a lot different practitioners. They got all different opinions. The reason why we are not going to introduce one is because of the time. The second is because they never succeeded. They failed. The reason why they failed, one of the reasons is because some practitioners, they firmly believe that Chinese medicine was the only correct medicine. Although they study Western medicine, they try to use Chinese medicine explanation to criticize Western medicine. They try to use Chinese medicine theory to find the mistakes in Western medicine. For example, even today, many Chinese medicine practitioners always say that Western medicine, they treat the headache from the head. They treat the pain in the foot from the foot. They treat whatever from the joints from the joints. So they treat specific area from the disease. However, this is very different from Chinese medicine because this kind of thinking is lacking of the holistic concept. In Chinese medicine, because of the holistic concept, we treat the patient suffer from headache as a whole. We might treat the liver, we might treat the kidney, we also may treat the stomach, depends on individuals. Because in Chinese medicine, all these imbalance can contribute to headache. So some practitioners, they try to use Chinese medicine theory to criticize Western medicine. And in this way, they will find a lot of mistakes with quotation mark in Western medicine. While some other practitioners, they stand in the other way. They firmly believe that traditional Chinese medicine is an old medicine. It's undeveloped medicine. Western medicine is the only correct medicine. So they study Western medicine. They try to use Western medicine theory to explain Chinese medicine or to criticize Chinese medicine. When we use these two terms to explain, these Western medicine practitioners, they try to modernize Chinese medicine. They still think that they still value Chinese medicine, but they thought that Chinese medicine was undeveloped. They try to modernize Chinese medicine from Western medicine view, and some they just against Chinese medicine. They think that Chinese medicine is the reason why China become poor, become undeveloped during the war. As you can see from these two views, the bias from both sides, either from Chinese medicine or Western medicine, these bias determine the failure from the start. However, the integration of Chinese medicine and Western medicine still a huge problem for us today, because even today, there's no well-accepted answer for Chinese medicine and Western medicine. Although in China we practice both medicine in one hospital, we practice in different departments, we see patients with Chinese medicine, with Western medicine. There's no way to integrate the theory in this true medicine. So this is still the huge research that's for all of you. These are some common views on Chinese medicine. Some they think that Chinese medicine has to be reorganized in a scientific way. Some they think Chinese medicine, the experience is precious. You can use experience, but the theory is unscientific. And these are some of the common debate in even today among practitioners, especially between Chinese medicine and Western medicine practitioners. There's no answer from our class here. These will be might be the further study and further research field if you go to this field in future. You will tell me what's the answer, what's your answer. We also need to be careful that if you use Chinese medicine theory to explain Western medicine, or you use Western medicine principles to criticize Chinese medicine, these two ways, both of them are unacceptable. The reason is because these two very different medical systems, they have very different principles. They have very different rules. You can't use one rule from one system to criticize another system. That just doesn't work. This will be very similar. You use the rule, for example, when you play sports, when you use the rules of tennis, when you play tennis, you got certain rules. You use these rules to judge the other rules in rugby. When you play rugby and when you play tennis, you use the rules for tennis to judge the rugby, or you use the rule for the rugby for the tennis. That just simply doesn't work. The similar situation if you use Chinese medicine view to see Western medicine, or in the other way, from Western medicine view to see Chinese medicine. You may think that this is obviously not true, or obviously you can't do so. But frankly, commonly in the world, many practitioners they see in this way. So as we said, there's no answer for this question. You are welcome to think and tell me what's your answer. In this video, we have used a very short time to discuss the worst period of Chinese medicine. The reasons for this worst period was not only from the wars or from the interfere from Western medicine. Another reason is because of the government. The Republic of China, the government at that time banned Chinese medicine. So Chinese medicine was excluded from the public education. This also affects the stop the education at the training for the young adult or young professionals. In the next video, we're going to introduce the new year of Chinese medicine after 1949. Thank you for your attention.